What your teammates teach their agents can reach yours too.
Sharing memory across the whole team like that sounds super convenient and way more efficient. I just added a line to our CLAUDE.md saying, not to touch the old auth module.
Funny, someone at the next desk explained the exact same thing to their agent last week.
Wait, so we both explain the same thing separately?
Right? Because the teaching stays local to each person. The more people join, the more times the same explanation gets repeated.
So no matter how much I grow my own CLAUDE.md, none of it reaches anyone else's agent. But if we manage CLAUDE.md with Git, wouldn't that reach the whole team?
For anything checked into the repo, sure. But what you teach the agent mid-conversation only sticks if you go write it down by hand. And CLAUDE.md lives at the repo level. So there's no place to put knowledge that spans multiple projects. That's the gap an open source project called TencentDB Agent Memory is trying to close.
So you can actually share what you've taught it.
Yeah, take that old auth constraint from earlier. You can register it as something called a skill. It gets structured in a fixed format, from when to use it down to the steps.
So it's not just a loose note.
Right? Once you publish it to the team's shared shelf, other people's agents can reference it too.
So something a teammate taught their agent ends up working for my agent too.
The whole system runs on 3 parts: Memory Core, Memory Hub, and Memory Proxy. Memory Core is the data store. It handles reading and writing memory. Stuff like that old auth constraint from before piles up in there.
Okay, so there's a store. But where do you actually look at what's inside?
That's Memory Hub. It's the dashboard you open in a browser. Who on the team registered what, which agent it gets handed to. You manage all of that right there.
So then how does Claude Code actually receive that memory?
That's where Memory Proxy comes in. It intercepts the agent's API requests and injects the memory right into them. But those 3 only cover where memory lives and how it gets distributed. I haven't actually explained the important part yet. What's piling up in there?
It's just a growing pile of text notes, right?
That's actually not it at all. What piles up isn't text. It's 4 kinds of assets: chat memory, skill, wiki, and CodeGraph. Chat memory and skill come from conversation, and both build up automatically just from you using the agent. This pyramid diagram has 4 layers, from L0 up to L3. L0 at the bottom is the raw conversation log, everything kept as is. L1 is that same log, stripped down to just facts and constraints. L2 groups things into scenes, by project or unit of work. And L3 is the long-term profile. Team operating policies, recurring principles, that kind of thing.
Doesn't loading all of that every time get heavy?
Normally it only starts up with L2 and L3 to save on tokens. Only when a specific fact is needed does it dig into L1 or L0 using BM25 and vector search.
I've always hated how earlier parts of a conversation get lost to summarization once it gets long.
The other one is skill, the thing I touched on earlier with the old auth story. Once a task succeeds, it automatically pulls out the steps that made it work.
So the agent itself writes up the steps.
Yeah, after a success, it gets structured all the way down to the details. That includes when to use it, when not to, the execution steps, and the validation rules. In this screen, there's a skill registered called Git single commit workflow.
So there are fixed fields, like when to use and validation.
Right after you register it, it's private, only visible to you.
So some random skill doesn't just get handed to everyone out of nowhere.
The other 2, Wiki and CodeGraph, target documentation and code. Wiki turns things like product docs and design documents into searchable pages. In this screen, 59 pages of documentation turned into 54 nodes and 119 edges.
Nodes and edges. Does that mean it keeps track of how the documents connect to each other?
Yeah. It holds a graph of which concepts and terms relate to which pages. So if the agent gets asked about a PI design, it can pull all the related pages at once.
So instead of digging through a table of contents, you search by connection?
CodeGraph targets code. It indexes how functions and classes call each other. 131 files turn into 7,445 edges.
What's the actual benefit of holding code connections as a graph?
Before you rewrite a function, you can check up front where the impact spreads.
Being able to see the blast radius ahead of time sounds genuinely useful.
Though right now CodeGraph mainly favors public HTTPS repositories. Support for private repos and SSH auth is still a work in progress.
So if you want to use it on a work repo, you're still waiting on that.
Also, both Wiki and CodeGraph build asynchronously, so it takes a bit of time before they're ready. To actually get it running, you can spin it up with 4 commands. Git clone it, then move into deploy/global images. Copy env example to create your env, then run startall sh.
What do you put in the env?
You write 2 sets of LLM connection info. The first is for memory extraction, the one memory core and hub use internally. The second is for proxy forwarding, the one the agent actually talks to.
So you can use a different model for building memories than for the actual conversation.
You can use a cheap model for the background work and a smarter one for production. That kind of split. Running startall sh spins up 3 containers in Docker. The 3 I mentioned earlier: memory core, memory hub, and memory proxy. On first startup, an admin key gets auto-generated and saved to a file.
What's that key for?
It's a string starting with skmem, and you use it for authentication, logging into the panel, or connecting Claude Code.
That seems like plenty for trying it out locally, but what about production?
There are 2 deployment modes, and you can switch between standalone and service. Standalone is for local development, a lightweight setup that's just SQLite and files. Service is for running multiple replicas on K8s, using Tencent's VectorDB and Redis.
So the flow is, try it in standalone first, then switch to service once it scales up.
Let's actually take a look at the Memory Hub admin screen. This screen shows 3 agents lined up: a docs engineer, a PR reviewer, and a bug fix engineer.
So it's like they set up a dedicated agent for each role.
Assets have 4 visibility levels you can set: private, shared, restricted, and agent only. Private means only the owner can see it. Shared means the whole team can.
Didn't you say earlier that a skill starts out private right after you register it?
Right? If you click that private setting and change it to shared, the asset goes up onto the team shelf. The moment it goes up, other members' agents can start referencing it.
So whatever a teammate teaches, their agent can reach Sharina's agent too.
On top of that, you can toggle it on or off per agent, like giving the old auth skill to the review agent, but not to the docs agent.
Yeah, if you dump in knowledge that's unrelated to the role, it just becomes noise.
Putting it on the shelf doesn't mean much if your own Claude Code never goes and looks there. Though, that part's actually the easiest. Connecting it to Claude Code only takes 3 lines of environment variables. You set the proxy's address in Anthropic base URL, and the auth key in Anthropic auth token. After that, you just pass the model name to the Claude command. The first time, it asks which team and which agent you're running as. Once you pick a team, agent, and task, the proxy remembers that setting.
So after that, it just uses the previous setting without asking again.
Yeah. From then on, every turn automatically pulls in the L2 and L3 memories, plus any matching skills. Related Wiki and CodeGraph pages get injected into the system prompt too.
So just by adding 3 lines of environment variables, it already starts out knowing the context.
That's where the assets you shared on the hub earlier actually pay off. There's also something called cost guard. You can change which model each agent uses.
So you pick different models depending on the role.
Like deciding a review-only agent is fine with a lighter model. You can apply that call at the individual agent level.
Managing both memory and cost from one proxy is really well designed.
It's all well designed, but none of this was actually built from scratch by Tencent.
You mean there's source material behind it?
Yeah. CodeGraph, Skill, and Wiki all have real open source projects they're based on. The CodeGraph implementation pulls in an existing open source project, called CodeGraph. The part that graphs out code call relationships isn't something Tencent wrote from scratch.
Is there source material behind the others too?
Skill reuses code from news research's Hermes Agent 2. The mechanism for structuring and storing task procedures had a source too. The last one traces back to someone whose name you've probably at least heard.
Like, a famous person? Someone from OpenAI or Google?
Wiki's design is based on Karpathy's LLM Wikigist.
Andrej Karpathy? The guy from Tesla, ex-OpenAI, right?
The repo's acknowledgements section spells it all out themselves.
Not hiding the sources actually makes it feel more trustworthy.
There's also something I want you to know about. The benchmark numbers in the README. It says on a metric called persona mem, they improved from 48% to 76%, but that's the author's own self-reported number. There's no independent verification yet.
So it's not like a third party has reproduced it.
Before we add this in, I think we should look at the other options first. You might have heard of Mem0, Zep, or Letta.
I've seen the names. Do they all do the same kind of thing?
Actually, they all have some kind of sharing feature for multiple people or multiple agents. Mem0 and Zep are memory backends you build into your own app. Letta is a server for building agents that have memory. They're all developer-facing building blocks. So you're expected to design and build out the sharing logic yourself.
So what makes TencentDB Agent Memory different from that?
It's not a building block. It's already a finished product, like a shared memory shelf for your team. All 4 asset types get the same visibility controls and version management built in. The review and share workflow and the admin dashboard both come included. With Mem0 and the others, you'd have to build that part yourself.
So it's the difference between assembling building blocks yourself and just setting up a finished shelf.
Once you've got 3 or more agents working on the same project as a team, that's when it's worth considering this tool.
Is it because past 3 people, the problem of repeating the same explanation starts to stand out?
Yeah, if it's just you running things solo, I don't think you need a setup this involved. Growing your own CLAUDE.md is enough to get by on.
But once you're past 3 people, the stuff you've grown never reaches your teammates. That problem just keeps going, right?
Right. It might be shifting away from an era where everyone grows their own CLAUDE.md toward an era where you line memories up on a shelf and hand them out as needed.
So growing your own CLAUDE.md turns into something the whole team does together.
Chat memory skill wiki code graph. You tag these 4 asset types with visibility and hand them out per agent. That kind of workflow might become the norm.
Sharina will come back to check this out once she's running a third agent too.